I don't know that every Texan has the same experience that I had, but I think a lot of us that were born when I was in the 50s were born in a rural circumstance. Not a lot of money, for one. My father couldn't read or write. My mother had an 11th grade education. And I more or less learned to read early because I loved it, and my mother pushed me to do that. And I did all the terrible jobs everybody else did as they grew up. I was a bouncer. I worked in hay fields, things like that. I did all the odd jobs everyone else did. And then gradually I decided I wanted to write. And when my wife and I got married, we had a small farm. And so we were doing that when I first started writing part-time. And so one winter, the weather got so bad I couldn't do farm work. So my wife said, why don't you write for the 3 months, and then when you get through doing the 3 months, then get a real job, you know. And that the first thing I ever wrote did sell, and then nearly everything I wrote in nonfiction sold. And this was my first attempt to write fiction. And I wrote a story a day because I didn't realize they were supposed to be hard. And I wrote one a day for, 90 days. So I had 90 stories, got 1,000 rejects. Actually, the way I got 1,000 rejects, of course, is I sent them to numerous markets. But I was sending them to all kinds of things, like Dog Digest and Cat Digest. Yeah, even the dogs that were at the magazine rejected the work. So I just kept sending things out. So I said, well, you know, I'm going to stop now. And I got another job. But I just kept at it, and gradually things started selling. And then once I started selling, it's just like it couldn't stop. It just one flow after another. Everywhere we go in Texas, we have to take a car. 4 hours to get somewhere. I've forgotten. It's a long distance, and maybe that's flying time. And we drive those kind of distances all the time. You know? Yeah, you couldn't very well have public transportation in some parts of Texas because in East Texas, where I'm from, is not quite like this. But because if you did in West Texas, it would be hundreds of miles between a town. You know? East Texas, where I live, things are closer, but it still requires a car culture. And I believe that Texans are going to be hard to separate from their car at any time. One reason drive-in theaters were so popular in Texas was because, you know, you stayed in your car. You came in your car, you rode in on your horse, and you stayed on it. Yeah, you could, back in the old days when you had the very large cars, you could live in the car because it was like driving your living room. Oil is important because it was very important in the growth of Texas. It's what made Texas originally the rich state that it is. It has a lot to do with the Texan character. You had people who one day couldn't read or write, never owned anything in their life, and then were absolute millionaires, and in some cases billionaires. The oil towns also brought in a lot of the worst kind of people, the people that were the killers and the murderers and people looking for a fast buck. Some people that would, like I said, would be broke, they would drill a hole in the ground and oil would shoot up, and overnight they'd be rich. Now, my family had an ant bed. We just found some ants. But Texas was fueled by oil, and it really is what defined the state, at least in the earlier part of the 20th century. And I think that's why it often appears in my work as symbolically.
Ovviamente.
Changed. I now write 3 hours a day. I practice martial arts a little less because I'm traveling a lot and because I'm getting long in the tooth. I still do it, and I still do it regularly, and one complements the other. Oh yeah, no doubt. I believe that martial arts helps me, gives me discipline, focus, and I think it actually influences the style that I write in. Yeah. In martial arts, economy of motion is important. Economy of motion, direct to the point, that's another important part. And to go with the flow, those are both. Well, you know, when I was growing up, I read Greek and Roman mythology and Norse mythology, and I loved that. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized that America and Texas was full of mythology. And a lot of the people that are mythological in Texas, like Davy Crockett, were real people. So they're real. And Davy Crockett used to tell stories about grinning bears down from trees, you know. So, and all of that sort of blended with the reality so that when I write stories, I'm not sure that I can tell the difference between them because it's become so much a part of who I am. Yeah, and I think the reason the reason I said that is I know some people who are real people and have done remarkable things, but they're almost legendary for those accomplishments. My father, who could not read or write, was very much a legend to me. Yeah, he became my hero when I was 4 years old.
Why?
The reason for that is that although I've had to put it together over the years, and my mother explained to me what had happened because I remembered it in pieces. When I was a child, we lived in a house high on a hill that overlooked a honky-tonk or a beer joint. And then, but because we lived down from that honky-tonk, they had, somebody had a dog that had some puppies. And my father got me one of those puppies. And that dog was like my brother. And one day we were in the yard, and we went across our yard, across a ravine. And the dog wandered in a man's yard and got in his flower bed. And so the guy came out of the house, just opened the door, and he grabbed my dog up by the hind legs and hit it in the back of the head with a stick. And then he threw it in the creek. So I went home crying, upset. And we didn't have a phone. So I don't know how my mother got in contact with my father, but the next thing I knew, he was home. And so he went across the creek. I followed him. What he did was he knocked on the door, and when the guy opened the door, he hit him so hard he knocked him out. And he wasn't through. He wasn't. That's not all. Then he got him by the ankles, dragged him through the flower bed till he knocked every flower down, and then he swung him until he went into the creek. And then my dog was still alive, and I was 17 when that dog died.